it is really important to set the foundation for, especially if you're going to build a company, right? Like who you are, what your principles are, who you want to surround yourself with, how you want to do that. Of course, entrepreneurship is all about making decisions with less than enough information.
What was it that prompted you to say, I'm going to start a business?
So I really did go to business school saying I wanna be an operator. I wanna run businesses and brands. And so immediately after Harvard, I went to work at Estee Lauder companies, big, well-known, multi-billion-dollar international brand. I worked at 3 of their brands, seeing what it's like to run a best-in-class business. I got the opportunity to leave and become the CEO of a fashion brand, actually called Cynthia Rowley. That honestly, I felt like I got to be an entrepreneur before I was.
Walk us through the journey to get to Veracity and how that all came about.
Sure. So while I was having this great career on the outside, I was, having a wreck of a personal life. And this was my first experience really seeing the pitfalls of our medical system. And I ended up being diagnosed with a metabolic disease called Hashimoto's. It affects your thyroid. And it was so casual the way I was diagnosed. It was like, here, you have this disease. You're going to have it your whole life. You have to take medicine your whole life. We're not going to tell you anything about it. Kind of looked at myself and said, I have to figure this out myself because the doctors are not helping.
Where do you see the future of your business going?
People are really paying attention to their own health in a bigger way, and I think that's so exciting and so inspiring. I'm excited about both through, education, but really also through product is delivering solutions across a whole wide spectrum that helps people, improve their long-term metabolic health and function.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jerome Dwight, and today's guest is reshaping one of the world's most powerful industries, the $500 billion health and beauty market. Ali Egan is the founder and CEO of Veracity, a science-backed health and wellness brand that's redefining health by focusing on metabolic and hormonal data to improve overall well-being. Born from her own health challenges, Veracity uses personal health data like hormone levels and biofactors to help people understand of their health struggles. Since launching, Ali has raised $14 million, built a thriving business, and is now on track to surpass $40 million nationwide in revenue. Before founding Veracity, she was the CEO of Cynthia Rowley, where she doubled revenue by shifting to a bold, direct-to-consumer model. She also spent years at Estee Lauder, helping to grow iconic brands like Balmain, Aveda, Jo Malone, Tom Ford, and The Ordinary. And yes, on top of this, she's a Harvard alum with a strong foundation in business strategy and consumer growth. We dive into how Ali turned her personal health journey into a groundbreaking business and what it takes to deal with both data and empathy in today's fast-moving healthcare space. Today's session is a masterclass in business building, so let's go. So Ali Egan, welcome to the show. I've been looking forward to talking to you because you're kind of in somewhat of the space I operate in, the wellness, aesthetic, beauty space from the software side, but your background is incredible. You are now the CEO of Veracity, Harvard-educated entrepreneur, on the cutting edge of beauty, wellness, but science-backed beauty and wellness. So a lot to unpack, and would love to maybe go back to the early days, Harvard educated, how you got to Harvard. Not many of us get to Harvard. What inspired you to get to Harvard? And what was that like? And maybe start there, and then we can kind of unpack your journey a bit.
Sure. So I went to Harvard for business school. So undergrad, I went to the University of Virginia. And like most kids, at least at the time, had no idea what I wanted to do, and was, pushed at that time into investment banking because I was competitive and I wanted to be the smart and the best. And that was what I was told that you did. And, they make it real easy by coming to your school and, trying to hire you. So I started more and more in your world as well. At Bear Stearns, a big investment bank that then went under before I actually started my full-time job. So, I was a senior in college, thought I had a job for a whole year lined up, had gotten a signing bonus, like all the fancy stuff, and then was out of a job. just as quick. So I think that, really laid a foundation for me of thinking about my career in a different way. But ended up landing on my own 2 feet, finding my way to a different, investment bank, and then eventually private equity. So I worked in at a private equity firm called Catterton Partners, now called L Catterton Partners. They focus on investing within the consumer space. And so I was, investing in companies and found it so interesting. You get to think about what are the consumer trends, what's happening, what are good businesses within that. But I felt like there was such a disconnect between um, actual value creation, like where it was happening. And I personally have always wanted to be someone driving like value creation versus value extraction. And
Hmm.
I just found like looking at the companies that we invested in, yes, as an investor, we enabled them to help do that through capital, but we weren't the ones actually like innovating, bringing teams together, like putting pen to paper and making it happen. And that's what I found my real calling to be. And so I went to Harvard really, with for the opportunity to teach myself how to be a well-rounded leader and
Hmm.
consumer in the and sort of operator in the space that wasn't just sort of a financial advisory financial
Hmm.
investment decision maker.
Hmm. Great insight. So there's a couple schools of thought on MBA business schools. I've got entrepreneurs on one camp saying, hey, they condition you to think a certain way and you can never kind of think out of the box. And then I have another camp that says, look, business school was great, gave me some foundational learnings, which now I can translate into entrepreneurship. I happen to lean on the latter camp, maybe because I have a business degree as well. But I'm interested in your take because Harvard's sort of the top of the pyramid when it comes to business education. Did it actually help you? And I'll tell you why, because I've got a real world example. I've got a daughter who's thinking of getting into a graduate program versus entrepreneurship, and I was reflecting and saying, where do I guide her? So I'd love to hear your thoughts because you've done it in a classroom, but then you've had obviously tremendous success in entrepreneurship. What's your take on that?
Every individual is different and it really matters like what your goals and starting point
Mm.
are, to be frank. Like what do you want to get out of the experience? And some of it is going to be academic learning, some of it's going to be time for personal development and meeting people, etc. And it's also what the opportunity cost is, right? Like if your daughter has like the dream job already lined up, should she leave that to go to Harvard? Maybe the consideration is different
Mhm.
there. But I do think it's a fabulous opportunity that most people do not get in their careers to take that really like unadulterated time out and like for me, I had grown up in the finance world, and I can't say, I don't think the people I worked with were bad, but I can't say that I even understood what leadership was in a real way. And,
Mm.
so some of the things you get the chance to do seem very soft. And if you just thought about it at the time, you're like, I'm paying an astronomical amount of money to learn about these things. But it is really important to set the foundation for if you're especially if you're going to build a company, right? Like
Mhm.
who you are, what your principles are, who you want to surround yourself with, how you want to do that. And of course, entrepreneurship is all about making decisions with less than enough information on, less than enough time. And so I do think it has been beneficial to me to have had, some time previous to explore some of those things, see lots of different examples. My personal philosophy in like business life in particular, but life in general, is everything is about reps. And you do it enough times, you learn what to do, you learn what not to do, etc. And that's your sort of biggest opponent when you're young in your career, right? You're
Hmm.
probably smarter, ambitious, have more time than anyone else, but you don't have enough reps. And sometimes for the right people, business school can be the opportunity to get sort of like, even if they're faux reps of looking at different
Hmm.
cases or, having lots of conversations. And that is valuable, but it just has to be right for you too.
I love that perspective, getting in your reps. I can't stress enough how much effort and repetition matters in perfecting anything, any endeavor. So you've got these great career options, run into a little snag with the little financial crisis that took out Bear Stearns. And but you learned to pivot, and then you still went into investment banking, private equity, typical Harvard MBA sort of career trajectory, making a lot of money, presumably. So from there, what was it that prompted you to say, now I'm going to take a bigger leap of faith, because I'm going to start a business, right? And that's a whole new ball of can of worms, because now you've got HR issues, you've got financing issues, operations, marketing. How did you get there? And how did you even think that was the right move for you?
Sure. So all of that was prior to business school. So I really did go to
Right.
business school saying I wanna be an operator.
Ah,
I wanna run
okay.
businesses and brands. And so immediately after Harvard, I went to work at Estee Lauder Companies, big, well-known, multi-billion-dollar international beauty brand. I worked at three of their brands while I was there. Got a great experience at really, seeing what it's like to run a best-in-class business. But honestly, I was kind of bored out of my mind, like, because you work like, it's sort of, you feel like if you got hit by a bus, it wouldn't really matter because the organization is still going to go on. And, they work very far in advance, which of course is a good practice, but um, it was hard for me to feel like what I was doing was actually creating direct value. And I personally need to feel that way. And so I got the opportunity to leave and become the CEO of a fashion brand actually called Cynthia Rowley. And that honestly was my ideal. Like, I felt like I got to be an entrepreneur before I was, and with a brand that already had, was established, incredible. But we had a big, overall business, but our team, was, and our main office was about, 25, 30 people. And with our stores was, in the 50 to 60. So it's still not a huge organization. And so really that's where I, feel like I got my
Mm.
initial real entrepreneurship, and before I took the real leap to, start my own thing from literally zero.
So I want to go back to Cynthia Rowley, because you did something transformational there. You doubled revenue, and you also moved from wholesale direct to consumer. Brand new strategy, tech enabled. How did you just do that in such a short time?
Yeah, so I don't know if you know anything about the fashion or apparel industry, but it's really broken to be honest. At least it was, in the kind
Mm.
of mid 20 teens, where, it's the way you make a brand is to be distributed in, Bergdorf Goodman or Bloomingdale's or all these other places.
Mhm.
But their business model was, they would order product from brands months in advance, change their orders. So, but the brands, by the way, are taking those orders, making huge investments in product that they have to place, 6, 9 months ahead of time, creating this product, delivering it to the retailers. The retailers, get to reject some of it if they want to. Then they get to sell it, try to sell it. And if they can't sell it, they mark it down, and then they can charge you back for those markdowns. And they can actually even return the inventory at the end of the season to a brand. So you may have these big initial sales on the front, but depending on how their business is running, you end up like actually losing money off of it. And this has
Mm.
happened to so many. But I think there was this fear in the apparel world of like, there's not a familiarity with technology and e-commerce. And so me coming as an outsider, I think was a great partnership because I said, like, no, we have a great brand. It's a very visual product, which makes a ton of sense for direct consumer marketing and advertising. And so I said, I feel really confident, like I can launch a Shopify store and we can build a meaningful business very quickly and then clean up the side of our, wholesale and licensing business where it operated correctly, make a lot of sense and help promote the
Hmm.
brand. But just doing it, blanket and sort of being at the whim of these retailers and not being able to negotiate because you don't have any standing power, like putting the brand in a place where it could actually have more leverage.
So then you move to Veracity, which is a company you founded and as CEO. And this has been a tremendous success story because it's sort of purpose-driven through your own personal struggles, but still in line with your passions, which is wellness and beauty. So walk us through the journey to get to Veracity and how that all came about.
Sure. So while I was having this great career on the outside, I was, having a wreck of a personal life because my husband and I had been together since college, and we're finally at that point where we're ready to start our family, and unfortunately ended up experiencing infertility. And so through that process, I was, sent for testing, kind of check normal things out. And this was my first experience really, seeing the pitfalls of our medical system. And
Mm.
ended up being diagnosed with a metabolic disease called Hashimoto's. It affects your
Mm.
thyroid. Um,
Mm.
and it was so casual the way I was diagnosed. It was like, here, you have this disease. You're going to have it your whole life. You have to take medicine your whole life. But like, we're not going to tell you anything about it. We're not going to tell you, anything else that you should be doing. We're just going to give you this script and just send you on your merry way, even though I was like 31 years old or something like that at the time.
Mm.
And I didn't question it because I didn't know to question it. And I, started taking the medicine, started on IVF. And then almost 3 years later, when I'm running Cynthia Rally, we were still not successful and had been through just a lot of physical, mental, emotional turmoil in that process. And I just really kind of looked at myself and said, I have to figure this out myself because the doctors are not helping. And so that is what led me to find functional medicine. And if you don't, functional medicine is really a practice of understanding bodily systems as they work together and not so individual, which is how our more Western medical system
Mm.
is set up.
Yeah.
And it's really set up on identifying root cause drivers rather than just treating symptoms.
Mm.
Um, and through working with my physician there, who's actually now our chief medical officer at Veracity, I was able to understand, like, yes, I'm treating this symptom with this prescription drug, but I'm not actually addressing the root cause. And I have all this, reaction and underlying inflammation that my body is not being able to deal with. And so by working with her in a very short amount of time, I was able to get pregnant, have my two children. And actually, I've been able to reverse my disease, which, as I mentioned,
Wow.
like they don't tell you is even possible.
Yeah.
Um, but I couldn't help but like keep coming back to this point in my own mind of like, what if I had known before? Because like my experience and my experience is really not that unique. Like people come, find functional medicine, but it's always after a lot of, suffering. And I said, well, hey, I've worked in, beauty and fashion, and people are spending a ton of money and a ton of time on issues that actually have root cause drivers, and we're still only treating symptoms. And so,
Mm.
I was really inspired to say, like, can we actually create a brand and products that actually address root causes and then inspire people in the right way to be better CEOs of their own health, but not to have to do it in just say preventative health realm, which is much harder to attract people to and get motivated. And so with Veracity, that was kind of the main underlying thesis. And we started the company with a broader mandate than what we do today. We were kind of addressing everything under functional hormonal root cause health, helping,
Mm.
people um, find out why they had acne or hair loss or things like that. And through testing, we have a hormone test. Through testing, tens of thousands of primarily women, and really taking time to listen to the consumer insights, we understood that there was a big opportunity within metabolic health and weight management. And so we spent about a year developing a proprietary patented product that we launched in 2023 and has just been a huge commercial success for us. And so where we stand today is we are the leading brand in non-drug safe and natural metabolic health, because we address root cause mechanisms and also, help empower people with that more holistic picture of their metabolic health.
It always inspires me to meet entrepreneurs like you who, kind of turn your pain into purpose, right? And you built a successful business, did some successful funding, Series A total 14 million in total, and you're on track to hit 40 million in sales across 100 offline locations. So clearly expansion mode. It strikes me that the rise of autoimmune diseases and a lot of this hasn't been talked about from a preventative standpoint, and I'm glad you've become one of the voices now to take the charge. Where do you see the future of your business? You're clearly just getting started. Where do you see the future of your business going?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, there's a much more deeper focus, whether it was COVID or what have you, but people are really paying attention to their own health in a bigger way. And I think that's so exciting and so
Mhm.
inspiring. The downside of that is there's a lot of people all over TikTok and Instagram that just have, the blanket answer for everything and want to, call things out or say this one thing is the savior of all things, right? Is the
Mhm.
answer for everyone. The truth is that bodies are individual and bodies are complicated, and we need to respect that. And so I feel very excited about building a company that can deliver proven things, but also be a voice in in the power of the nuance that actually
Mhm.
helps people make the right decisions for their health.
Mhm.
So that's personally what I spend a lot of my time doing and thinking about. But from a more, practical standpoint, we obviously have this, one superhero SKU, but that has amazing both clinical and, real life results. But I think there's just such a people, in the space of weight management and metabolic health are just so kind of abandoned. And like we've also been trained to think that weight management is a point in time solution, whether it's like you go on a diet for this amount of time or you do Whole30 or whatever. But really, like it's like going to the gym. If you start to go to the gym and build, your bicep muscles, you can't expect to stop going to the gym and still have biceps. You
Mhm.
can't expect to stop focusing on your metabolic health and still have a strong metabolism. And your metabolism is literally what, powers every, cell in your body with energy. And so
Mhm.
I'm excited about both through, education, but really also through product is delivering solutions across a whole wide spectrum that helps people,
Mhm.
improve their long-term metabolic health and function.
So I want to get tactical here in the last few minutes. You've clearly kind of redefined a bit of a category. You created a new category, and building a mission-driven brand. So for all the entrepreneurs out there who listen to this show, what are like three tactical, practical things they can do to turn that idea into a real business?
That's a great question. The first one I say is don't be afraid to talk about your idea because idea is
Mhm.
like, um, you know, some people I think are afraid because they're like, oh, what if someone takes my idea? And one thing that Cynthia Rowley said to me when we were working together is she's like, you should never be afraid of that, because if you're really going to do it right, you're going to do it faster and better than anyone else anyway. And I think that's very sound advice. But the more you put things out into the world, like that's how you even work through it on your own, right? Like sometimes it's not even what other people tell you. It's like you putting it out and feeling how that is and then molding from there. So don't be afraid to share, even in the earlier stages. The second thing I like to talk a lot about is understanding your own opportunity costs. Like it is really amazing to want, like, I love entrepreneurship because I love value creators. And ultimately, that's what entrepreneurship is. It's like, it's not just value extraction, which is a lot of our, system. But like, you're not a martyr, and it's important to have your family and your priorities, and, thinking through like, how long can you do something? What should you invest in, both time and financial wise, et cetera, why, and should you raise money or not, but really thinking through those opportunity costs in a very solid way. And the last, and something I learned, quite frankly, maybe the hard way, is this notion of product market fit, where I think there's like, we find ways to convince ourselves that we have product market fit, right? We cut the data in different ways. We look at different sets of competitors or things like that to say, oh yeah, product market fit. What we experienced, like kind of through the two phases of my company, is like, when you have product market fit, it, because it's parts of it at least feel easy. And sort of having that honesty with yourself of like, is this part of it easy? Because it's almost like a marriage. Like if it's not easy at the beginning, it's not going to be good or easy at the end. So making sure you're taking that lens to saying, is this, is what I'm working on successful?
Ali Egan, it's been an honor. This has been one of the most inspirational podcasts. I learned a lot, but also got inspired. So thank you so much. Continued success. We're going to have you back to talk about your next chapter as you grow the business. And I just want to thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Jerome. It was so nice to spend some time with you.